Like most economists, I have been introduced to the concept of growth early on in my undergraduate studies. It was just stated, you want growth, and so what are the policies to achieve that? And obviously this intersects with many of the discussions on climate change, because the kind of growth that we generate now often is contributing to pollution, contributing to CO2 emissions. We often say, that we need technology, and that one of our greatest strengths as a species is to come together in groups and develop new ways of doing things, making more things available. Well, actually, that is just another way of saying economic growth. We don't measure it in that way, but what technology is doing is that it's expanding the realm of possibilities, and that is what growth is all about. And so if we curtail growth, we're actually bringing down the value system and the mechanism that allows for technological solutions to develop at scale and at speed, which is the one thing that we know we will need more of. By some estimates, we could decarbonize 90% of the economy with technologies that already exist. But the key is how to make them affordable, how to iron out the details of the implementation. And for that, businesses are the key. And often we have a discussion about why businesses should do this in the interest of humanity or to do good. But actually, the message I'm trying to get across, which is something that appears also in the new World Economic Forum report on an equitable transition, is to say this is in the interest of business themselves. There is an interest in being a pioneer in these technologies, in being a pioneer of sustainability, and this will be in the interest of your bottom line. Perhaps not today, perhaps not tomorrow, but I'm not talking in 2050, 2100. I'm talking within an investment horizon. We have to move from a context in which everything, directly or indirectly, is contributing to CO2 emissions to a new type of economy that goes eventually to net zero. What this implies is that we have to restructure completely our economy, the whole of production and consumption, transport, housing, clothing, agriculture, and more. There are parallels in history when this has been the case, and these are industrial revolutions. In one way, you could say that this is a good news because it shows that this has happened before and so that it is possible. The bad news is that we know that this has generated a lot of anxiety. This has generated a lot of social tensions.
Evito gastar gas, leña, pues ya que también nuestro monte, el año pasado hubo incendio muy grave en nuestro monte y A pesar de eso, pues para recolectar leña también, aunque el monte es demasiado grande, ¿verdad? Pero nos ahorramos porque así no inhalamos humo y cuidamos al medio ambiente, ¿no?
Podemos usar ese sol extremo que estamos sintiendo en este momento y todos los días que hay sol a nuestro favor, en el sentido de que vamos a cocinar con ese sol intenso, vamos a cocinar con esa luz que es nuestra fuente de calor y que nos va a ayudar a producir nuestros alimentos. De esa manera estamos ahorrando combustibles fósiles, de esa manera estamos contrarrestando también ese mismo calentamiento global, aprovechándolo.
Today, around 30% of the clinician's time is dedicated to tasks that could potentially be taken over by AI, freeing up time for being closer to those patients and also being able to see more patients in a more effective manner. Today, you have hundreds of data points coming from different types of parameters, imaging, lab data, history. AI can definitely help to bring all this information together in a speed that human brain may not be able to do so. So allow physicians to do a more precise assessment of that patient and define the better treatment. They may not know where the data to build the knowledge on the AI is coming from. Is this representative of the global population? Is that actually going to be correlated with my own specific situation? So I think building trust and ensuring that the quality of the data that we're using to build AI solutions is very relevant. The quality of the AI is as good as the data that we use to build it. So we will need to use open sources, good quality data that is actually offering the right diversity in population, in conditions for us to be able to build safe and responsible AI. So in my view, it's a partnership that will require multiple stakeholders.
It may result in you employing refugees, employing people who are displaced, and that's a good thing. The number one issue is the massive increase in the number of displaced persons that we've seen over the past 10, 15 years. And that increase means that there are more and more internally displaced persons and refugees and less solutions. if one looks at the past 10 years, the evolution of things, more and more business people understand issues of forced displacement and are willing to be engaged, not just through philanthropy or providing support and assistance, but also to be part of the response. Often one of the problems when you're a refugee is that you are discriminated against. It's difficult for you to find a job. So more and more businesses understand that and make an extra effort. We're working with them to make sure that we can de-risk investment, that we can introduce them to places where they would not necessarily have thought that business was possible. We're not necessarily asking about charity. We're also asking that you provide services in places where there are displacement. I think the best example I can give is Brazil, where I heard from government leadership, from businesses, the fact that the presence of refugees has actually had a positive impact on the economy of where they were. Interestingly, the government actually said that the cost of hosting refugees was actually completely covered by what they were bringing to the economy. Ensuring that refugees are part of the economy was actually something considered as positive by the country, by the host communities, and by the businesses. A better understanding of the fact that humanitarian assistance is not an end in itself, and that we have to try as fast as possible to move from situations where people are dependent, humanitarian assistance, to a situation where they are self-reliant. Of course, it requires time, it requires a lot of partnership from various actors, but that's what I would say is clearer now than was 20 or 30 years ago. It's also important to avoid what we've had in a number of countries, the fact that refugees were provided with protection and assistance in camps, separate from host communities. These are the kind of things that are creating tension between host communities and refugees.